Chapter 11. In the chapter Regulators of Life, we shall see how control and coordination of life processes is carried out in living things. So, let us begin. Let us see first what is meant by coordination. In any multicellular organism, there are various tissue systems and organ systems. For meticulous functioning of organisms, there has to be a perfect coordination among different systems or organs and various stimuli from their surroundings. Thus, we can infer that control refers to the systematic regulation of various activities, and coordination means the orderly execution of the activities. This attributes to an organism's proper growth and development. Let us perform one activity. Take out from the refrigerator the polythene bag in which vegetables are kept. After 5 minutes, remove the vegetables from the bag and feel the inside of the bag. What is your observation? We feel moisture inside the bag. Inside of the bag has become wet. Plants absorb water in which minerals are dissolved from the soil with the help of their roots. There has to be loss of water from the plant for this process. This loss of water is known as transpiration, which is brought about by the transpiring organs of the plants. Transpiration takes place in the leaves through the stomatal openings. This process is followed by ascent of sap in the shoot, that is translocation, and utilization of the absorbed minerals in various metabolic activities. For the above-mentioned processes to take place, there should be enough quantity of water with dissolved minerals in the soil where the plant is growing. Similarly, many processes take place simultaneously in animals. Man sees food, hands pick it up and put it into the mouth. The morsel of food is chewed in the mouth with the help of teeth and assisted by the tongue. The food is mixed with the enzymes in the saliva secreted by the salivary glands. The food is sent to the stomach for further biochemical reactions, and the complex food materials are broken down into simple forms such as glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids. The digested food is absorbed into the blood and the undigested food is excreted. Thus, digestion, absorption, circulation, and excretion are interdependent. Oxygen is necessary to obtain energy from glucose and fatty acids. Oxygen is supplied by the process of respiration. It is clear from the above example that various organ systems function in synchronized manner. In short, we can infer that coordination is necessary between organs and organ systems that bring about all the interrelated life processes. Any disturbance at any stage due to lack of coordination or other factors can leave the desired process incomplete. In order to complete the process successfully, there has to be a perfect coordination between different systems and organs involved at every step. There should not be any kind of randomness of any nature at any stage of the process or activity. These systems should be effectively controlled and coordinated. This would provide the stability and maintenance of the steady state, that is, creation of a relatively constant environmental condition within any organism. In any organism, there should be a perfect system of coordination between internal activities due to water or enzyme level and temperature, etc., and such similar external environmental stimuli. The maintenance of the steady state by different systems of an organism for its optimal functioning because of a perfect coordination is called homeostasis. Let us see how coordination in plants takes place. Unlike animals, plants do not have a nervous system or muscular system. Then how do they exhibit movements? The movements exhibited by plants are mainly in response to the stimulus. In certain sensitive plants, like mimosa, movement is in response to the stimulus of touch. This movement is known as seismonastic movement. There is no growth involved in this movement. On the other hand, the movement of a seedling is because of growth. If growth is prevented, seedling does not exhibit any movement. Here we conclude that plants exhibit two types of movements. One which is growth-dependent movement and the other which is growth-independent movement. Activity. Take a wide-mouthed, shallow bottle. Put some moist cotton in it. Place a few sprouted seeds on it. Observe the directions of growth of radicle and plumule. Radicle grows in the downward direction and plumule grows in the upward direction. Pick up one of the sprouts and place it in such a way that the radicle is towards the source of light and the plumule is away from light. Observe the directions of growth daily. What do you conclude from your observations? We can see that radicle grows in the direction away from the light. Plumule grows in the direction of the light. Students, it is interesting to know that tendrils are sensitive to touch. When they come in contact with any object, the portion of the tendril which is in contact becomes sluggish, whereas growth is faster at the other portion. This causes the tendril to entwine itself around the object and thus cling to it. Movements in plants which are growth dependent. The movement or growth of any part of a plant in response to an external stimulus is called tropism or tropic movements. The shoot system of any plant responds towards the stimulus of light, that is, it grows in the direction of the source of light. When a potted plant is kept near the window in a room, you would observe that the stem bends slightly towards the window. This movement exhibited by the plant is called phototropic movement. When light falls on a part of growing plant, a hormone called auxin, which is synthesized at the tip of the shoot, helps the cells to grow longer. As the light is falling on one side of the plant, this hormone auxin diffuses towards the side of the shoot which is not in sunlight and stimulates the cells to grow longer. Hence the plant appears to bend towards the light. On the other hand, the root system of the plants responds to the stimulus of gravity and water. These responses are called gravitropic and hydrotropic movements respectively. Chemotropism is the movement of plant part in response to certain chemicals. Example, the growth of pollen tubes towards the ovules. Other examples of plant hormones are gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid, etc. Gibberellins help in the growth of the stem. Cytokinins promote cell division and hence is found in greater concentration in areas where rapid cell division takes place, such as fruits and seeds. Auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins helps in promoting growth. Abscisic acid is a plant hormone which inhibits growth, leading to wilting of leaves. Movements in plants which are growth independent. Certain movements of plants do not result in their growth and are termed as movements which are growth independent. Hormones bring about various movements in plants in response to the changes occurring in its surroundings. On close observation, we see that the movement also happens at a place different from the place of touch. So we conclude that the information that a touch has occurred must have been communicated. The plants use electrical or chemical means to transfer information from one cell to another, as there is no specialized tissue present for the conduction of information. Then the movement is brought about as the plant cells change their shapes by altering the amount of water in them. The cells either swell or shrink and thus change their shapes. The Venus flytrap has a trap which looks and smells like a flower to insects. When they land on it, they touch a trigger hair which slams the trap shut, and they are then digested by the plant. Some other movements seen in plants which are growth independent are lotus opening in the morning and the tuberose at night. The tentacles on the leaves of the insectivorous plants like Drosera curl inwards at the touch of an insect and trap the insect. The explosive fruit of balsam plant burst open at appropriate time, thus scattering the seeds. Suppose an inter-house basketball match is in progress at your school's court. Enlist a few actions of the players where you observe control and coordination in their movements. There is a coordination between the eyes and the legs when a player evaluates the other player's technique. Also, football player needs to coordinate and control his running movements. Let us see how control and coordination takes place in human beings. In human beings, different activities are taking place simultaneously. They need to be coordinated efficiently and effectively. The coordination of different bodily activities are controlled by two mechanisms, namely nervous control and chemical control. The components of the human nervous system are the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves. The human nervous system. The nervous system can be divided into the central nervous system or CNS, the peripheral nervous system or PNS, and the autonomic nervous system or ANS. The central nervous system comprises the brain and the spinal cord and regulates all activities of the body. The peripheral nervous system includes all the nerves. The nerves form a network and spread throughout the body. They are instrumental in connecting all parts of the body to the central nervous system. The autonomic nervous system comprises of all the nerves present in the involuntary organs like heart, stomach, lungs, etc. On the basis of their function, the nerves are categorized as afferent and efferent nerves. Afferent nerves carry impulse from the sensory organs to the brain. Efferent nerves carry impulses from the brain to the sensory organs. It is interesting to know that in unicellular amoeba there is no nervous system. The cell is sensitive enough to control its own life process or activities. In certain coelentrates, like Hydra, the nervous system is at a very primitive stage of development. In annelids, like earthworm, a number of nerve cells come together and form a cluster. These clusters are joined together to form a beaded structure called the nerve cord. The nerves are composed of neurons and neuroglia. The neurons are specialized cells capable of creating and transmitting electrochemical impulses. The neuroglia are supportive cells which assist the neurons in their function. Name the sense organs. Where do you find the gustatory and olfactory receptors? What do they detect? How do we taste food? There are distinct regions on the tongue where main tastes are detected or recognized. Taste buds at the tip of the tongue detect sweet tastes. Those that are at the back detect bitter tastes. Group of taste buds at the side of the tongue measures salty and sour tastes. The taste buds on the tongue transmit the different taste information as a message to the brain. Brain processes the information and tells us what food is actually in our mouth. How do we smell? Smell enters the back of the nose when you inhale. They also rise up from the back of the mouth as you eat, which is why smell is such an important part of tasting and enjoying food. This explains why food tastes odd when we have a cold, as the nasal organs become inflamed and the sense of smell is temporarily smothered. Also, to determine whether the object is hot or cold, we usually touch them. How do we detect that we are touching a hot or cold object? All the information from our environment is picked up by the specialized tips of dendrites of a neuron. It sets off a chemical reaction producing an electrical impulse which travels from the dendrite to the cell body and from there through the axon, that is the nerve fiber, to its end. At the end of the first axon, the electrical impulse induces the release of some chemicals. These chemicals produced go across the small gap called synapse of 2 to 20 nanometer between the neurons and start a similar electrical impulse in the dendrite of the next neuron. This is the procedure by means of which the impulses travel in the body from the neurons and are delivered to the muscle cells or glands. When an action or movement has to be brought about, the muscle tissue does the final job. The muscle cells should move to enable work to be done. The movement at the cellular level takes place when the cells change their shape so that they shorten. Muscle cells possess special kinds of proteins which are capable of bringing about change in their shape and make the cell capable to respond to nervous electrical impulses. We can infer that the nervous tissue is composed of a highly organized network of neurons capable of transferring information in the form of electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. In accordance to their functions, the neurons are classified into 3 groups, namely sensory neurons, motor neurons, and association neurons. Sensory neurons conduct impulses from the sense organs to the brain and spinal cord. Motor neurons conduct impulses from the brain and spinal cord to the effector organs like muscles and glands. Association neurons perform integrative functions of the nervous system. What would you do when you see a motor car coming towards you while you are crossing the road? We move away from that place at once. You smell something delicious. Our mouth waters. Suddenly, you hear a loud noise. We put our hands on our ears. Your pet dog Dollar is comfortably taking a nap. Go near him and drop a stainless steel spoon on the floor. What do you observe? The dog's ears stand. These are all reflex actions. Let us see what is meant by reflex action. Any sudden action in response to some happening in the environment is called as reflex. The general idea is that we react to such a situation without thinking about it or without feeling in control of our reactions. Yet, these actions of ours are in response to the stimulus from our surrounding. At this juncture, we are forced to think, how is control and coordination achieved in such a situation? Let us try and understand this in further detail by considering the following example. Touching a vessel containing very hot tea is a dangerous situation for us. How would we respond to a situation like this? One possible way is that we think consciously about the pain and the possibility of getting wounded, and hence we withdraw our hand. Now, how long will it take for us to think and perform the activity? If the messages or impulses have to be sent, then it would take quite some time for us to react in response to the situation. But the responses to such reactions are quick and immediate. Rather than having to think about the sensation of pain, if the nerves that detect pain were to be connected to the nerves that bring about the movement of the muscle, the action might be completed quickly. Nerves from all over the body meeting in a bundle in such a connection is commonly called as the spinal cord. Hence, reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord, although the messages reach the brain. Reflex arcs are perhaps evolved in animals because the thinking process of the brain is a bit slow. In many animals, especially lower animals, the complex neuron network needed for thinking is not there or is not well developed. Hence, reflex arcs have been evolved as efficient ways of functioning in the absence of the true thought processes. However, in spite of the presence of complex neuron networks, reflex arcs continue to be more efficient for quick responses. Now let us study about the central nervous system, CNS. The central nervous system is a delicate structure composed of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain is protected by a bony structure called the cranium or skull, and the spinal cord by the vertebral column or the backbone. Protective membranes called the meninges are present in the space between the soft CNS and the bone. There are cavities present on the different parts of the brain known as ventricles, while the long cavity of the spinal cord is called the central canal. The ventricles, central canal, and the space between the meninges are filled with cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. CSF keeps the CNS well nourished and also protects it by absorbing mechanical shocks. Many of our actions are voluntary in nature, that is, we think before doing it, like walking, clapping hands, bending down to pick up something, etc. In all these actions, there is involvement of our muscles. The brain sends messages to the muscles and the muscles act accordingly. This is the second instance where the nervous system is communicating with the muscles. Such a communication between the central nervous system and the other parts of the body is brought about by the peripheral nervous system, PNS, which is composed of cranial nerves arising from the brain and the spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord. The brain makes us think, and we act based on our thinking. We infer that the brain must be a complex structure with different centers responsible for integrating various inputs and outputs. The brain is a complex organ divided mainly into three regions: the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain, or the cerebrum, is the main thinking part of the brain. It has regions which receive the sensory impulses from various receptors. The areas for smell, hearing, vision, etc. are separate. There are different areas where the sensory information received and interpreted are put together with the information received from other receptors, as well as the information that is already stored in the brain. Such centers are known as association centers. On this basis, a decision is taken on how to respond, and the information is sent to the motor areas which controls the movement of the voluntary muscles. It is interesting to know that each side of our brain controls the opposite side of the body. Usually, the left side of the brain controls speaking, writing, and logical thought. The right side of the brain controls artistic abilities. How does my memory work? Sensory memory is brief, tells you what is happening around you. Short-term memory lasts only for 30 seconds. Remember a phone number and dial it, and then it vanishes. Long-term memory is for things that you have carefully learned and memorized. Classify the activities as voluntary and involuntary. Food getting digested, beating of heart, and release of hormones into blood are involuntary activities. Do we think or remember to breathe or pump blood from the heart? There are certain actions that take place in our body which are not reflex actions or voluntary actions, but something positioned between them. There is another set of actions which results due to muscle movements over which we do not have any thinking control. Such actions are termed as involuntary actions and are controlled by the midbrain and hindbrain. Involuntary activities like blood flow, breathing, sneezing, etc. are controlled by the medulla oblongata, a component of the hindbrain. Another component of the hindbrain is cerebellum. It is responsible for coordinating the voluntary movements and also maintaining the balance of our body. Example, riding a bicycle, picking up an object from the floor, running along a straight line, etc. Let us look at some facts about the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain has 186 million more neurons than the right hemisphere. 750 to 1000 milliliters of blood flows through the brain every minute. The brain can stay alive for 4 to 6 minutes without oxygen. After that, the cells begin to die. Albert Einstein's brain weighed 1,230 grams, significantly less than the human average of 1,300 grams to 1,400 grams. Let us consider what is chemical control. The chemical control is brought about by chemical substances called hormones. These hormones are secreted by the endocrine glands, also known as the ductless glands. Very true to its name, these glands do not have any duct to transport their secretions. Thus, on production, these hormones are directly released into the bloodstream. Due to this, the hormones reach everywhere in the body, though the glands secreting them are located in particular places. The endocrine system shares its responsibility of control and coordination with the nervous system. Both the systems work in cooperation to integrate and control various body activities. The significant difference between the two systems is that the nerve impulses are rapid and are usually of short duration, while the hormonal action is much slower and long-lasting. Let us study the following example. Suppose some animal, like a rabbit, is caught in a scary situation. Its body has to be prepared either to fight with the situation or to run away from there. Both are extremely complicated activities that will utilize a great deal of energy in controlled ways. If the body of the rabbit has to trust only the electrical impulses through nerve cells, then the tissues instructed to get prepared for the activity would be limited. On the other hand, if chemical signals were to be sent, it would reach each and every cell of the body and render wide-ranging needed changes. Students, do you know that endocrine glands are also known as glands of internal secretion? Their secretions, commonly known as hormones, are also referred to as chemical messengers. In the arthropods, they induce color changes and are influential in regulating development. Insect metamorphosis is under hormonal control. In frogs, thyroid secretion stimulates the metamorphosis from tadpole to adult frog. It is very important that hormones should be secreted according to the requirement. We need a mechanism for this. The required quantity of hormone released and the time of release are regulated by feedback mechanisms. Example, when the sugar level of blood rises, it is detected by the cells of the pancreas which respond to the situation by producing more insulin. As the sugar level of the blood falls, the secretion of insulin is reduced. Well, that ends the chapter. Hope it was a joyful learning. You have the options to view a mind map for a quick recap and a question and answer section to study the exercises. Wish you all the best. Bye till we meet again.